How do we know when it's time to be done? You're right where you thought you always wanted to be, and you get that twinge of, maybe this isn't right. Wait, shouldn't you be grateful that you're exactly where you always wanted to be? How do we know when it's time to walk away from a dream? We're two childhood best friends talking about creative mindset.
I'm Emily Hatch.
And I'm Carrie Schaefer, and this is Honestly, Dear Listener.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo!
Everyone, I am really excited to welcome our guest, Sydney Park-Smith, today. This topic is really important and a big deal.
It's definitely a big one. So, Emily, tell us more about Sydney Park-Smith.
Sydney Park-Smith has worked with OpenStage Theater Company since 1997 and has served as producing artistic director for the company since 2019. Her recent roles include Tracy in Sweat, Marie Antoinette in The Revolutionists, Sir John Middleton in Sense and Sensibility, and Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing. Recent directing credits include The Book of Will, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which I worked with her on, and
Nice.
and Sherwood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Every Brilliant Thing, and Avenue Q. So she is just crushing it in the world of being in charge of things that
Oh,
are
yeah.
artistic and also being an actor herself. Please welcome to Honestly Dear Listener, Sydney Park-Smith. Sydney, welcome.
Hello.
Yes. Hi. Okay, so how do you two know each other?
Oh, golly. We met with Full Monty
Yeah.
when we brought you into audition, Anne.
Yeah. So at OpenStage Theater, I was
That
I
was
played that role before, and you guys were doing that show, and I was really excited to join up and do theater again for the first time in 10 years.
Woohoo.
Actually,
Was this in Denver?
Yep. No, Fort Collins.
Fort Collins. Gotcha.
That was in 2019, which was my first official season as producing artistic director
Nice.
and
That's
my
awesome.
first big show as producing artistic director on my own. So there was there are a lot of things that went awry with that show. One big thing was the costuming. That's a whole other thing. But I did
Sydney
get
ended
to
up basically costuming the show essentially like during production week, right?
in
It
5
was,
days.
yeah.
Wow. But isn't that the point of Full Monty? Is that there really are no costumes? Wink, wink.
You do want to have rip away pants for the
I
strippers that
mean,
actually work.
that
So
makes sense.
that was important and that fit them. That was also a thing.
Right.
But happily I got to meet Emily during that. And at that point I already knew I wanted to direct and produce Hedwig and the Angry Inch in the following season. But Emily was recommended to me by our vocal director for Full Monty as the woman to be the vocal director for that show.
Nice. Well, I'm
Mhm.
not surprised. She's amazing. Okay, so
Guys.
what what are you doing right now? And kind of give us the lowdown on kind of your career and what art you're into.
So, I I am an actor first, foremost, all of that. I started acting when I was very young, like 5 years old, and went to school in New York. Went to HB Studio, moved home to pay off my debt from living in New York in my early 20s, and home is Fort Collins, Colorado. And once I moved back here, I wound up getting involved with OpenStage Theater and Company. The two founders, Bruce and Denise, I had actually worked with when I was in high school. They came in to direct my senior year show. And once they heard I had moved back, they asked me to come in and audition. That was in 1997, 1998, something like that. And I have worked with them since as an actor, designer, started directing, doing production management, and then became the associate artistic director for 5 years. And then in 2019 was named the producing artistic director.
Wow, that's a big job.
Tell us about what does a producing artistic director do?
So for a nonprofit such as OpenStage, kind of everything, as it turns out. When I came in, we had a managing director due to the COVID, if you
The
will,
COVID.
the board, the COVID, the board laid off the managing director and gifted me the joy of the financials. So
Oh.
I then learned all
Hmm.
about the financial aspect of running a nonprofit, as well as taking on all the sponsorships, fundraising, grant writing, all of that, along with, choosing shows, staffing them, and producing them.
Wow. So, just curious, what's normal for an artistic director to do? Because it sounds like you're doing like 3 jobs then, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is normal scope for your job
The,
technically? I'm just curious.
I don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
It really, I have no idea. If I knew, I would probably like lay in my closet in a fetal position and cry a lot. They, for a typical artistic director, I mean, if you're talking about a larger, like professional theater, they are literally dealing in the artistic direction of a show and the artistic vision of the company. So they
Mm.
will choose the season, work with, or a lot of times they will choose the directors and then work with a casting director and each of the directors in casting the shows. So, like, say that's the beginning of their season. Whereas for me, I choose the shows, get the rights for the shows, choose the directors, and then I act as a casting director with the directors for each of the shows.
Wow.
I would say artistic director typically does about a third of what I do in my job.
Wow.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's a lot of work. I would like to know, how long did you know you wanted to do that job? Like, what do you
Mhm.
think?
Good question. Um, I actually had just had my second child, and
Mm.
my husband and I were talking, and I was just like, I feel, and of course, at that point, I was 40. And there's always this fear as you're aging as an actor or any sort of performer, really, that you're going to age out of being able to perform, or in my very specific case, age out of being castable,
Mm.
whatever the F that means, right? So
Ooh.
I know. So
Yeah.
I was thinking about other things that I could pursue in the theatrical world, so that I felt like I was also challenging myself, learning something new, all of those things. And it occurred to me that at some point the founder was going to have to retire. Like she and her husband founded it in 1973. So so my husband Harry was like, if this is something you want to do, you should talk to her about it and learn all the things. And so I approached her, and that was when her longtime associate artistic director was stepping down. And so she named me as the next associate artistic director. And for the first, 3 years, I did it as a volunteer, like
Hmm.
like was not paid except for specific shows where I was the production manager, and just came in and learned about what it is to run, not only produce shows, but to run a nonprofit organization. And then in 2019, the board named me the next producing artistic director. So it was really, it was like a process of having both my kids, and without being able to like leave and audition in different places all the time. It was a function of being able to make art in the place that I live and be able to have some sort of say or influence in it, as opposed to heeding other people's whims,
Mm.
if you will.
Yeah, because as an actor, it really is like, please see me as this, like, and I'm out of control. I mean, we're out of control entirely as people who are hired to do art, of how people perceive us, our bodies, our like type, all of that stuff, and like having no control of that.
I mean, I was
I
told
hear
once
that.
when I was 28 that I was too tall to be 30.
Oh,
That
that makes no
thank you.
sense.
Yes, I was like, but you don't actually
What?
grow taller. I don't understand what height has to do with it. And this specific director said, he's like, I just don't believe that, you're under 32, 35. You're just so tall. And I was
Oh,
like, well, I'm
oh
28.
my.
So, okay.
I'll be this tall when I'm 30. So, okay.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So what is that like being on the side then of being able to make some artistic decisions beyond, the smaller scope of an actor? You now making artistic decisions for an entire production.
It's exciting and terrifying.
Yeah.
And this is why also I learned of the very valuable lesson of um, working with people that know more than you do.
Mm.
So I may know a lot in a specific aspect of a production, but working with someone who has experience in something that I don't have a lot of experience with, or is just a highly experienced individual in like many places that I can learn from,
Mhm.
is really like the best tools you could have. And I think that's to create anything, is to work with people that you respect
Mm.
and that know more about know more about things in a way that you do, like, or don't, as the case may be.
Mhm.
So, and I have been very lucky to work with a lot of individuals who are amazing to work with, and also we've been able to collaborate and learn from each other, which has been awesome.
Which is a true testament also to Sydney's, I'm going to talk about you like you're not here, Sydney's leadership skills and her ability to be an amazing person to work with, because you attract people that are incredible, and you're such a joy to work with, and like it's magical to see, like, people in a community theater, usually you put that in a place in your brain where you're like, it's community theater. Like Sydney has, I since she's been in this position, I've seen this company like level up so
Mm.
hard at every turn, and the community that you've built around that, and the financial support and all the things that you've done. Like Sydney's an amazing leader, and you've done a lot in this 5 years that you've been doing this.
Mm.
Thank
Um,
you, Em.
yeah,
I
um,
appreciate that.
it's true. So, uh, so so now why don't we get into a little bit of a plot twist as we're discussing all of these wonderful things and how good you are at doing them and why you started doing it. You're leaving.
I am.
Yeah. When are you leaving?
I'm stepping down in July of 26.
And just so you guys know, like, feels kind of like a secret, doesn't it? But everybody knows already,
I
so it's
announced
not
it.
that juicy, I guess. They know. So tell us about that.
Well, it is interesting because whenever I tell people, they're like, oh no. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It's all good. Like, I've given 2 years notice to the board of directors.
Right.
If like, it's a decision I'm making. It's not a moment of like, I'm throwing in the towel because I'm frustrated. Like, this is something that I have been thinking about for almost a year by the time I announced it. And it was a function of working with some of the people that I've worked with, like Emily, like a mutual friend of ours who is directing again this season, that I realized I'm not going to say I got stuck in Fort Collins, but it was easy to just stay here and swim in the same pool for
Mm.
many, many years. And I realized with running an organization that, I mean, it's a lot, obviously. I have two boys And I would like to be present for them as they enter these, quite frankly, scary years, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also I want to do what I love to do and work with people that I really want to work with, and not not be responsible for the entire identity and culture of a what is about to be a 52-year-old organization,
Hmm. Yeah,
which is a
that's a lot of
lot to
pressure.
carry on your shoulders.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And coming into an organization that was led by the same person for 47 years and led in a very specific way. And she is definitely her own leader, and has accomplished a lot in the time that she did that. Coming in and taking that over, there's always going to be that sort of shadow over me, or like the difficulty in evolving an organization and pushing it forward. Um, as Emily said, I have elevated the level of what is happening at OpenStage, which is great. And with that also came a lot of shoving people down the track, if you will. Like, nope, we are going to do things this way now. We are going to move forward. I know change is hard. Like, all of those things. And so we as an organization have evolved to what I think is a great spot for me to step away. And with that, hand it over to someone who is younger than me. I'm 50. I'll be 52 by the time I step down. Um, give it to somebody who is younger with all of the energy and who approaches things in a different way than I do. I think an organization can't continue after 52 years to continually do things in the same way, and to have new life injected into that, and a different or new way of leading and a different energy with that leadership, I think is important for any organization to remain relevant and challenged, which is what you want in art. Um, so yeah, and also I need a rest.
Yeah.
As I said to the board of directors, I said, I want to be at a point in my life where OpenStage is not the first thing I think of in the morning, the last thing I think of at night, and the thing that wakes me up at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to do something in my life that I'm not consistently worried about, like my job, the organization I lead, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that
And
all went
so
into that decision.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
How, a lot of sense. How, so as that leadership position and the complications of the work, and like making sure that you're doing the best that you can for the organization, that all makes a lot of sense to me.
Sydney, how did you know that it was time to leave?
It's funny because I asked a friend of mine who also was an artistic director for a lot of years at a different organization. I asked her, I was like, when did you know it was time to leave? She's like, the minute you ask yourself the question.
Okay. Mm.
And I was
Mm,
like, oh, she goes, you wouldn't be asking that question if you didn't already know it was time,
Yeah.
or that you wanted to make this change. Like, there it is. And again, it's not like I'm completely unhappy in the organization or any of that. I mean, something Emily said just a couple minutes ago, which reminded me of a part of the reason why I made the decision, is the influence of the people that I have had the privilege and opportunity to work with in the company, coming from outside of the company and bringing energy in from other organizations themselves, what they've done in their professional lives, that has also been inspiring to me. And that has been like, oh, wait, I can do something else
Mhm.
beyond this,
mm,
or I
Yeah.
can do this somewhere else, or do something else entirely. So that has been inspiring as well. And Emily is one of those people. So
mm.
again, like, very grateful for the professional and personal relationships I've made through this organization as well. And that was a part of what helped me make this decision.
How are you doing with figuring out when to walk away from something that was a dream 10 years ago that you've accomplished. How's your heart? How are you feeling? Like, how are you handling this? Like, what's coming up for you? Because I could imagine this is like, this will be like grief. This will be all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff. I'm just getting deep with it. Like,
Yes,
We
absolutely.
love it.
I mean, I've been a part of the organization since I was 24. So
wow.
for now 26 years, which is, I've been with the organization longer than I was alive when I first joined it, right? So, yes. And like my closest friends, including Emily, I have met through this organization. So there was a part of me, and I said this to my husband, let's get real deep. I said this when I first told him that I wanted to leave. He was like, you should do it. And I said, but I'm afraid I won't be special anymore.
Yep.
Right? Like, this is the thing that people have told me I'm really great at. This is the thing I've like strived for so many years. And I thought, being the producing artistic director of OpenStage was going to be where I was until I was done. And that is, I'm not going to say mind blowing, but it is a weird place to wrap your brain around. And like, I started having these thoughts before my 50th birthday, but then after my 50th, it was interesting because mine and M's mutual friend Kenny called me, and he's like, how are you doing now that you're 50? And I was like, interesting story. For the past 2 days, I went through this whole morbid, oh God, I'm so close to death thing. And he was like, wait, what? I was like, but then I remembered something my fabulous therapist said to me when it was like a year and a half prior, when I had said something about being middle-aged. And she said, oh, that's cute. How many people live to be 100? And I was like, damn it, Susan. Like,
oh, Susan.
Susan. I'm constantly like, what would Susan do? But, and she's totally right. And I realized, like, life is finite. It doesn't matter how old you are. And so I wanted to move forward, like, being excited about my day and not living my life in a state of constant stress about raising money, about basically, and not only the organization itself, but I mean, you both are in the arts, so you know this. There's a big human factor for this. And because so many of these people in the organization have known me for so long, they also, like, I get phone calls from people who need personal help. I get all of these things happening during shows. So there's just a level of engagement and stress that I'd like to be able to step away from and be better at setting limits for myself, if you will. Because since I did really just kind of jump in, and it was myself and only one part-time person running the organization during 2020, 2021, it was 2 years of just everything was my responsibility. So it's very hard to shake that and not feel like I constantly have to be worried about something. So I am excited to let go of that. It will be weird, like, and then on the other side of that, it will be weird not to have that to think about all the time. Like,
yeah.
What will I do with all of my free time? Don't get me wrong. I'll find things to do. Maybe wander around in a caftan and have lunch with people for like 3 months. That would be lovely.
Lovely.
But
with a margarita.
Margaritas. But yeah, I don't know if I've still wrapped my brain around it because I'm still in the midst of it. Like, I have 2 more seasons. But it is interesting to be at the age of 50 and be like, huh, that isn't what I want to do now, which is
Yeah.
something that so many of us just don't think will happen.
You said something earlier that is so interesting to me. I'm afraid to quit this job because I'm afraid I won't be special.
Mhm.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I feel my body knows exactly what you're talking about, but say more about that.
um, so I've been an actor for many, many years, right? So the joy of being like on stage and being, seen in this character and being seen for how you can play the character
Mm,
is incredible. I mean, no matter what most performers say, the feeling of applause and being seen and recognized is a huge part of why we do this.
sure.
So to then be seen and recognized for being myself
Mm,
and being a leader, um, being intelligent, being knowledgeable, professional, um, all of that was a whole other level of being seen. Especially since, like, growing up, I was told by my lovely, well-meaning deceased father that I should really just be somebody's secretary. So,
wow.
mhm. So to do this and to learn as much as I have, and now to be like, this was great. I'm not saying I won't be a leader again or do something else, start another theater company. I just don't want to, I'm just done doing this thing right here. And to think of it as just
Mm-hmm.
this thing as opposed to everything, which is what the not
Yes.
feeling special anymore is. Because in that
Mm-hmm.
moment, running OpenStage and being the producing artistic director and getting recognition for that was everything. And for me in that
Mm-hmm.
moment, it was who I am, who I was, all of that, instead of separating myself as a human being from that and being like, well, that's what I do. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
still this, pretty okay person over here, but this is just one of the things that I'm good at. And it's not
Yeah.
the whole reason that I exist in the world or the whole reason that folks are friends with me or want to work with me. This was
Mm-hmm.
simply a platform or a vehicle for that to happen. And I can create or be a part of another one.
Boy, it's hard when our value gets wrapped up in
Yeah.
what we do.
Our
And it
identity
is,
entirely.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy. Because yes, like when people are clapping for you or they're having you stand up and be recognized for, the leader of
Mm-hmm.
this or builder of that or, creator of that, it's really, really difficult to keep it in focus that like, this is not why I'm valuable. I have value
Right.
outside of this. I don't, how do you keep those things separate?
Well, that's why I'm in therapy, Carrie. Uh, one of the reasons why I'm
Same.
in therapy, because like the big question that Susan asked me, like within like probably 3 weeks of seeing her, because she's like, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm an actor. I'm a director." And she's like, "No, that's what you do. Who are you?" And I was
Yep.
like, "I don't know how to answer that." Like that. So that's something I'm still working on. Is who I am, because even now, I mean, whenever I introduce myself, I'm like, I'm Sydney Park Smith. I'm the producing artistic director of OpenStage Theater and Company, as opposed to, hi, I'm Sydney. Like that seems, and it's completely warped, but that seems to be not enough, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
introducing myself.
Yep.
And so to
Yeah.
remove that title, remove that sense of like being is definitely frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I'm not sure, you know, who I will become or who I'm becoming during all of this.
I relate to this in many ways, and I'm sure our listeners relate to this in many ways. I would feel, and I don't think this about you, but personally, like putting myself in that position, I might feel like afraid that these are the only people and this is the only organization that will trust me or think I am
Mm.
smart. And if I leave, then no one else is ever gonna like want to
Yes.
work with me again.
Yep.
It's not true, but it feels like this, like, is this the only place I'm allowed to do this? Because that's how, as actors and like, and
Yes.
people for hire, we get that, like, is no one else going to choose me
Mm-hmm.
if I had finished doing this?
Yep.
Absolutely. And I just, I got a lovely callback email from a theater in Denver recently where a friend of ours is directing a show. And I was like, what? And then also there was the moment of
Mm-hmm.
realizing, like, okay, well, wait, I am producing and directing a show during the time that rehearsal for this show is happening and it's going up and all of these things. And I had this moment of panic, and I still have to talk to him about all of that as to why I'm not auditioning. But I had this moment of panic of, this is my only chance.
Uh-huh.
Mm,
If I don't take this now, nobody else could possibly ask me, or he won't ask me
Mm.
again. Um,
mm,
which I had to talk myself down from just last night,
Mm-hmm.
actually, because I was like, how can I make this work in the calendar? And the reality is, I also have 2 children, and
Mm-hmm.
they get out of school between 2 and 3 every day. And my husband works until 6 o'clock on a military base. And like, we make all of this work, but if I'm trying to work on 2 projects and one of them is in a different city at the same time, like, that's just not realistic at all. But it was that moment of panic of, oh my God, this is my one chance where somebody outside of OpenStage is asking me to do something. If I don't take it, then it's never happening again.
Yes.
Like,
yep. Yep.
Get that.
Also, I didn't know about this callback. So, congratulations. That's really
thanks.
exciting. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can fully, clearly see outside of, being outside of your body and not in your mind. I'm like, you are so like valuable as a human, but as a worker, as an actor, as like a duh, like people are just gonna scoop you up. But it's easy for me to say that because I'm not going through all that. I can't see that for
Uh-huh.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, well, duh, there's gonna be like a million more chances because you're freaking amazing.
Well, and
It's
it's such a we oftentimes don't give ourselves the options. Like there are so many more options than just one or two, but for some reason we can only see like the one or two. And
Yes.
I think it's also fear too, especially for us women. We're getting older. The whole like,
Yeah.
oh, now I'm not castable now that I'm, 40 or 50 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scarcity mentality. There's not going to be enough for us. When now that I'm 40, my career is just starting, but it's
Yes.
because and I feel all those pressury messages of like, sit down, girl. You're not a 20 something anymore. And so you're not
All right.
interesting. And I'm like, I refuse.
Mm-hmm.
I try and wake up every day with like, I am here and I'm going to do the thing because I want to, and I will not be held back by any of this trash that we're too old.
Uh-huh.
Truly. And there
No, I
are
know.
more
And that
plays.
is true.
There's more stories being written about women of our age now. Like I can't like so many TV shows and plays and like that's all I want to watch right now. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
watch like young whippersnappers in their 20s. Like love them,
No.
like cool, but like
whippersnapper.
you haven't gone through shit. You don't know yet. Like you have not had a dark night of
Mm-hmm.
the soul like you
Mm-hmm.
do when you are face down on a bar somewhere at 37. you know And
Yes.
so, like,
Yes.
no, give me
Dark
those.
night of the soul.
Dark night of the soul.
Oh, give me those. Give me the stories
That
of women that have been through shit.
Oh God,
You
yeah. Well,
know?
my friend and I were talking about this the other day because she was reading this monologue from that was assigned to her from a show that she was asked to play a 20-year-old, like, or a woman in her 20s. And my friend Jess was like, I don't know how to do that anymore. Like, that's not where my
Yep.
body lives. She's like, that's not where
Yep.
my brain lives. It's not where my facial expressions are. She's like, none of us are the same as we were in our 20s.
Yep.
So, and I said, and we were talking about roles that we play, and I said, I much prefer the roles I'm playing now. And thankfully, like, we have women playwrights, writers that are writing roles for women our ages, thank God, because
Yes.
the roles I've played in the last 2 years are two of my favorite roles I've ever played. And it was Marie Antoinette in The Revolutionists and Tracy in Sweat, and completely opposite ends of the spectrum for these roles. And this is not a place where so many women our age lived 10 years ago. And so I think it's exciting that so many women are creating for other women,
Yes.
which is great. And it's not focused. And there is, again, nothing wrong with the 20-somethings. I
Totally.
was 20 once as well, like, and I played those roles. And always knowing as I approach my 30s that I was getting to a point where I was like, oh, no. Not that I played a lot of romantic leads anyway. I always was cast as a sarcastic best friend. Because as I discussed earlier, I'm too tall to be
So
a young
weird.
romantic lead.
30.
But it's so exciting now to be 50 and be like, oh, so here's a role I want to play. Here's a role I want to play. And here's a quick side note is something I will miss about running an organization is it is my job to pick the shows. I get to pick the stories that are told in the season, which means I am looking for very specific stories to tell and roles for folks to play that typically didn't get to be on stage as much.
Yeah.
So that is something I will miss very much about having this job.
Yeah,
Is being able to create those roles and those to basically give a place for these stories to be told, especially in Fort Collins.
Right. Absolutely. So do you hear that, playwrights out there that are like, no one wants to hear what I have to say because I'm
Yes.
interested in writing about women who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Hello. There is a huge need for your art.
Yes.
Get to it now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm preaching. Sorry.
No, I was like, the version of me that's writing a show is like, okay,
Yep.
fine.
I know. I'm like, get it done, Emily. Let's produce it.
You guys, I did not expect to say this, but I'm going to say it.
Come on,
Do
Emily.
it.
Come on.
A renewed, like I was saying last week on the podcast that I've been like sad lately. And I had like a renewed sense of hope recently that is like, I've been telling myself a lot about what it's supposed to be like and what people would want me to do and putting this pressure on like, okay, well, it's going to have to be da 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 da. So I went to see, if you guys have seen the show Somebody Somewhere on HBO with Bridget Everett and Jeff Hiller, it's so good. And I went to see Jeff Hiller's show a few months ago called Middle-Aged Ingenue, and he did a new show called Jeff Hiller's Basic a couple days ago. And the way that he does his shows inspired me so much because it reminded me of like how I want to do my shows, which is just like telling stories, and they happen to be hilarious. And I hope that they could have some music in them. And so I have decided that I'm going to start just practicing stories at open mics that maybe there are comedians and maybe there are whoever. Like, I'm not trying to do stand-up.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to do a cabaret. I'm doing my own shit. That's my own stories. And I can go bomb and I can go do whatever and practice that stuff. And I'm really freaking stoked because I've been talking to Sydney about doing this show that I'm writing, and Sydney has been like really the biggest champion of me writing this show, like truly. And I have to cry every episode. Now I was starting to do it then. So I hear you, Carrie. I'm writing this show.
I know.
And I hear you, Sydney. And I have a plan that feels so exciting and good. And we're starting to do the artist's way. We're doing, I don't know, Sydney, if you knew this, but we're doing a 12-week class for like working your way through the artist's way, which is, who is it by?
By Julia Cameron. It's like an international bestseller. She has you do morning pages and artist dates. And anyway, it's
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like a workbook for getting in touch with your artistry and helping you actually create your things. And so we're doing that 12-week class on Sundays, like at church time, basically.
Perfect.
And I'm like, this is perfect timing because it's going to force me to actually write my shit and go talk about it. So
it's going to allow you, it's going to unleash you to write your shit and talk about it.
And these are called plays.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yes, that's the thing. It's like, I'm not like stopping bleeding or saving a life. We actually are, in fact, looking to like, inspire people or cause them to have conversations they may not have had before, or just make people laugh.
Yes.
And this is like what I remind myself of at, 2 a.m. when I'm up with a hot flash, all of a sudden freaking out about something in the theater. I'm like, nobody's life's in danger. Like, settle down.
Yeah. Yep.
And
it's called a play.
It's called a play for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Sydney, what do you want? And we can keep this in or take it out if it's too much, if it's too like, Carrie, that's weird and I don't know. But like if you could have a conversation with yourself in 4 or 5 years, what would you want her to know from this
in 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Basically to shut the hell up and just do it. Like, stop talking myself out of things. Stop being afraid. Ultimately, like, and this is for, everybody, you're actually better at what you do than you think you are. Except, of course, for the, middle management, middle-aged white men who have all the confidence in the world. I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are like, I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job.
You can also be a middle-aged white man who doesn't have the confidence, but
yes,
we all know who you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
This is not all middle-aged white men by any stretch, but we all have at least one. Just do it. Like,
yeah.
Stop being, you can still be afraid and do it. Like, this is what I tell my children, and I need to follow my own advice, which is courage is not doing something you're not afraid of. Courage is being terrified and doing it anyway.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's what that is. And fear is just your brain trying to, in its own anxiety-ridden way, just trying to keep you safe, when in reality, there's nothing to be afraid of and nothing is threatening your life. As far as at least auditioning goes, at least. I can't speak to every other thing in the world. I'm not going to be jumping out of a plane anytime soon, because in that way, my brain is like, no, that's a terrible choice for you.
I literally last week Carrie was like, what are you afraid of doing? And I was like, well, I'll never skydive.
But you don't want to either. That's
no,
the thing.
It's just funny that you literally brought up exactly except jumping out of a plane, because fuck that.
I'm not doing that ever. So many people are like, it's exhilarating and you'll love it. I'm like, you don't know me the way I know me, and nothing about that sounds great. And
even getting in the plane sounds terrible.
It sounds terrifying. I have a fear of heights. I don't need any of this. And my husband did pararescue in his early career in the military and wound up in a hospital for 3 months.
Okay.
So
So honestly, dear listener, encouraging you to do everything creative and not jumping out of a plane.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you want to, great,
discouraging.
We
but
can't
no
help you
thanks.
there.
Yeah. Dang.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Sydney, you are such an amazing human. And we are just so grateful that you came to talk to us today about big, scary things, and just so glad that you are who you are. And so it's an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me on. I'm sure, I don't know, Carrie, if Emily told you, but I was like, why me? But
We all think that, though. Like,
oh yeah,
for even if it's something that I'm like uniquely suited for, I'm like, but why
But-
me though? And then people around me are like, hey, idiot, this is what
You're
you do.
amazing.
Yeah. So I'm not calling you an idiot. Just
no, I mean, there are times, let's be clear. So
Yes,
thanks for having me
please.
on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so just a reminder, our Artist Way class starts September 1st. It's only $75 for the entire 12 weeks. We meet with you once a week and we talk as a group. If you're interested, more information at honestlydearlistener.com/classes.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo!